Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Something is can we? Where is the IT?
Echoing very badly.
Recording in progress.
Testing. Okay. That they're trying to deal with the mechanics of recordings. Nevertheless, good morning, AG. How are you? Testing. When it does this, I don't know what is that. Okay. So let's just do this just a little bit. Okay. Okay. That's better now? Good. futhi lesi sifithi ubaba umoshwa ile nto
Uvaba uthi still certain others pending on now.
ya siqabelisi simshiyile kuthiwa nguwe umosha le nto. Yeah. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, honorable members, both physical and those who are on virtual. The AG, the DAG, and the team. Those who represent society out there in terms of the media outlook. I've just had to leave the meeting with RAF, which was taking place, started at 9 o'clock. I painfully leave the meeting, so I had to rush for this meeting. It was critical because they have made an invite to both Treasury and the Reserve Bank because they make the assertion that the standard they are using for accounting has been sanctioned by the side of the Reserve Bank. So I wanted to get that story. So I left before I could get into that. Nevertheless, this is my main job. Yeah. We welcome the AG because in terms of fulfillment based on the Public Audit Act and the requirement in law that there arrives a time when you have made the audits based on the Public Finance Management Act, they ought to be tabled officially in Parliament. For that process to occur and fulfilled, this committee must receive that report at the same time of that tabling to the office of the Speaker for the actual public consumption of the consolidated report of those audits. It is clear in terms of our own expectations that the Office of the Auditor-General never fails to do so, and even at this time to meet the required timelines for us to have conducted those audits in several auditees, which are departments, state-owned entities, all of them who have been supported financially through the fiscus, which goes extensively into a level of trillions of rands. So the audit is growing year after year, which is on the basis of a percentage outlook and split between the province, national, and local government. But in this instance, we are, in terms of the not only expectation, but as we have been advised by the Office of the Auditor-General, that those who ought to comply in terms of the Public Finance Management Act are going to be our attention this morning. So in advance, we appreciate that the AG has never failed to do so, and even at this time, we are going to receive the extensive report on the outcomes of various entities which are audited by the Office of the Auditor-General. We have been with you in the past week or so, looking into the materiality, which is as well a requirement on the reviewed Public Audit Act in terms of municipalities. And that outlook is an outlook which begin to place the office on the level of both the identification of such losses, if they exist, to the recovery in terms of those losses, 3, the deepening of accountability on those who ought to hold those accounts and directly manage those resources and be accountable as such. So I'm going to, without fail, noting if are there any apologies?
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to everyone. We have received apologies from Honourable Mende, Honourable Hlonyane, who won't be able to attend today's meeting, and we've also received an apology from Honourable Phillips, who's going to join us. Oh, you have arrived. Okay, thank you. So those are the apologies that we have received, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to members who have just joined, as Honourable Mlenza and Honourable Phillips. Colleagues, I'm going to give over to the Office of the Auditor-General, to the AG, whom we have learnt with the beauty of acknowledgement of the performance of the Office of the Auditor-General, the recognition which continues to be somewhat enjoyed through appointments made. The recent one, which is a huge appointment in terms of gaining status of external audit function of the books of the UNESCO, which is a huge recognition, not only of the Office of the Auditor-General, but how South African institutions could contribute the world over on matters of accountability and management of resources. And I wish you well in such an exercise in terms of your own teams, which are excelling in the domestic fold to ensure that those who get funding from the fiscus are held accountable in terms of value proposition of such expenditure and the outlook of management of those finances. So we wish you well in that newly acquired international role. Thank you very much. Over to you, AG.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, and good morning to you. I'd like to greet the honourable members of Scoag and the ladies and gentlemen that are on the line, and of course my colleagues from Team AGSA. Chair, you begin by recognizing and acknowledging our recent appointment as the external auditors of UNESCO. We're particularly thrilled about this appointment and for all the reasons you mentioned. And I've no doubt that the members of Team AGSA who've understood the sector only too well over many years of investment will deliver significant value to UNESCO and its broad range of stakeholders and do us all proud. I'd like to thank the committee and the honourable members for making the time and creating this platform for Team AGSA to share the work that we've done on PFMA. The audits of provincial and national departments as well as the legislatures for the year ended March 31st of March 2023, those audits have been completed. The individual reports have been tabled together with the annual reports of the respective auditees, and they've already been the subject of oversight engagements within Parliament, but also within the provincial legislatures. What we've done is consolidate the results, to analyze them, and to compile this report that we are tabling today, as we have done in the past. And it is my privilege today, together with the Deputy Auditor-General, as well as members of the executive team, to share with the committee the work of Team AGSA. Consistent with our mission and vision, which you know, we have conducted these audits with the utmost professionalism, with independence still the guardrail for everything we do, but with an eye for ensuring that we do add value into the systems of governance, the systems of oversight, accountability, and transparency. We have ensured that, as provided by the Public Audit Act, and specifically Section 20, the annual regularity audits that we conduct include an independent assessment and an independent confirmation of credibility on financial statements, on performance information, that is a service delivery report, and also indicating whether or not key laws and regulations relating to financial and performance management have indeed been complied with. In conducting our audits, our approaches have been informed by the Culture Shift 2030 strategy, which you are aware of, through which we aim to make a more direct, more consistent impact on the culture of public institutions, driving them towards organizational cultures that are characterized by performance, transparency, accountability, and institutional integrity. A key foundation of all of our audit messages over the last couple of years is the accountability ecosystem, through which we communicate that there are different role players or actors in the public sector accountability ecosystem, each of them with a distinct role, whether it is at a leadership or decision-making level or at a support, intervention, or oversight level. What's crucial is that they all be effective in their respective roles and they operate in a way that's complementary. We are absolutely convinced that if each of these role players does play their role effectively, there will be a vast improvement in the performance, in the accountability, in the transparency, and in the strength of public institutions right across South Africa and as envisaged in the Constitution. To get to the overall audit outcomes, we are reporting on a total of 418 auditees of the audits that we completed. The PFMA cycle includes other smaller auditees which we do not include in this analysis. For today's analysis, we've taken just the GR relevant PFMA auditees as well as the legislatures. Let's start with the good news first. The number of clean audits has increased quite significantly, and I think that's quite important. If you're looking at a PFMA cycle that looks after an expenditure budget of 3.1 trillion rand together, it's useful to see at least 35% of these auditees achieving the clean audit status. Commendable that 110 of them have been able to sustain clean audits over the past year, so they got a repeat clean audit. At least 53 of them have had a clean audit over the last 4 years. So that tells you that there are institutions that have maintained quality systems of transparency and accountability, that are able to put their financials together, that are able to put a performance report that is credible and reliable, and that have got key systems and disciplines that ensure that they operate within the rule of law. The next category is the number of unqualified opinions with findings. These are auditees where their financial statements have been confirmed to be credible, but they do have a problem either on performance information and or compliance. If you look at the 35% and the 39% of auditees that together make up 74% of the PFMA auditees that have been able to compile credible financial statements, I think that's important to note. We had a similar statistic last year where 74% of the auditees in PFMA were able to put credible financial statements. It's an important platform on which we can build. The auditees that are in the PFMA cycle have got fewer and fewer audits with modified audit opinions. So the qualified, the adverse with findings, the disclaimers, fewer and fewer of those over time. And I think it's important for us to take note that this trend of improvement has been coming over the last 4 years, consistently and even more rapidly over the past year. The only real blemish on this particular slide is the 31 outstanding audits. And they're outstanding because they've not been completed for one reason or the other. And I will touch on that in the next slide, because I think that is something that we need to ensure that gets the type of attention it deserves. But on the whole, very good performance on audit outcomes throughout the PFMA cycle. And as I said, with improvements that are visible right across the provinces and in the national sphere of government. On the next slide, we set out, and quite deliberately, an analysis of the audits that are outstanding. It could look like a busy slide, but all it is just to indicate to the honourable members a couple of messages. The first is that, as at the cut-off date for our analysis, which is the 30th of September, there were a number of audits that remained uncompleted. And there are different reasons for that. Some of the reasons are that there's a delay in the audit process, such as the local government SETA that had an issue with data, such as the government printing works had an issue with data losses 2 years ago, and now we're catching up with their audits. Some of them relate to disputes, technical disputes on audit matters, such as the Department of Health in Limpopo. If you look at the Railway Safety Regulator, a similar issue. So there are those anomalies in the audit processes, and we do consider it important for us to give space to finish these issues, close out on the technical dispute, and also give every auditee the best chance of finalizing their audit properly. So those are not quite the problem. There are some auditees that we were able to finish their audits in the meantime. So out of the 31 that were outstanding, we were able to finish 9 auditees, and that's on the right-hand side of your slide, and you'll see the outcomes there. Some of them were unqualified at the time that we finished their audits. Some of them were qualified, and others were disclaimed with disclaimed audit opinion. So we were able to finish those audits. There are instances where financials are submitted late. And here I would like to highlight that middle block where you'll see Alex Corps. For the last 2 years, they submit their financials late. You'll see PRASA. For the last 3 years, they submit their financials late. And then Talet or TVET College submit their financials late over the last 5 years. The law is very clear on the need for accounting officers and accounting authorities to submit their financials on time. And just as it is clear for the AG to complete its audit on time, so that those audits and their audit reports can end up in the legislatures and in the parliamentary system so that they can be scrutinized and accountability processes take place. So when there is lateness on a repeated basis, it starts to compromise transparency and accountability in a way that should worry us all. And if you look at an entity such as PRASA, with the significant budget and the significant impact of its operations on the lived experiences of South Africans, it's crucial that it does get into the oversight mechanisms for proper engagement for accountability reasons. There are instances where financials are not submitted, such as the group of SAA, which we know has been through business rescue, similar issues at Denel, as well as the Northwest Transport Investment Group. In this last block at the bottom, I would like to call the attention of the honourable members to key auditees whose financials have not been submitted, and year after year they do miss the accountability cycle within Parliament. Specifically, the Unemployment Insurance Fund, the Compensation Fund, NSFAS. Over many years now, there's a struggle on making sure that their audits are completed on time, their financials are submitted on time. I believe that NSFAS, their audit report, has now been tabled in Parliament as of yesterday. But the point I'm making here is that when we give these outcomes and that category of outstanding is there, please do pay particular attention on what it says about transparency and accountability lapses amongst those auditees. And it is for that reason that we share this information in the presentation today, as well as in our general report. Just in terms of some analysis of the audit outcomes themselves. If you look at each and every one of the provinces there, you'll see that over the last 4 years of this administration, every single province has improved its audit outcomes. Significant improvements in the Eastern Cape, where they now have a high number of clean audits, at 12 clean audits that have been attained over the course of this administration. And that is the outcome of consistent focus over this term of this administration, as well as a strong tone from the top of that leadership team that insisted that there be attention to improve audit outcomes. The gains that have been made, we are calling for them to be sustained, and we are also calling for them to be translated into the bigger departments, the bigger budgets, such as the Department of Education, Department of Health, who are still lagging behind the improvement trend. But nonetheless, a very, very good outcome. Even if you look at the Free State, fewer and fewer modified audit opinions, with more unqualified audit opinions than we've seen for a long time. Gauteng is a province that has also seen significant improvement over time. Notably, their big budget education department got a clean audit this year. And that is the result of sustained effort by the accounting officer over many years of working towards this. It's one of those auditees that reminds us that clean audits don't happen in a flash. It takes years of focusing on the right things. KZN also has demonstrated significant gains in terms of improvements on their audit outcomes, but also in terms of the number of clean audits that they've also attained. Again, also the result of a leadership team within the administration over many years now that has focused on driving the right sort of tone and the right sort of support. The list goes on in terms of the number of improvements. If you look at the Western Cape, they retain the top number of clean audits at 18. But for the first time, they're not too much of an outlier if you look at the other provinces, which is encouraging because it tells us that all the provinces are moving in the right direction. And the national sphere of government, also significant improvement over the last 4 years, which has been sustained in this year as well. If I move now to what we've analyzed as high-impact auditees, this will look somewhat unfamiliar to the honourable members. Over many years, we would have reported on what we called key service delivery departments, and we pulled those out for analysis. This time around, we've done it slightly differently. We looked at entire sectors, and we said, if you look at the value chain of health services, yes, look at the departments of health, but also look at other entities that support that initiative. If you look at higher education and training, skills development and employment, look at the entire ecosystem and value chain of how that works. And we've put all of those as high-impact auditees. So within these 193 high-impact auditees, they look after all of these key service delivery areas that we've listed on the slide, and they look after 85% of the expenditure budget together. We've pulled them out so that we can analyze them slightly differently, because we believe that if we can attend to those, we'll be able to translate the gains we're making in the number of clean audits, the number of improving audit outcomes, to improved reality of experienced service delivery on the ground. What this slide tells you is that if you compare the high-impact auditees to the other auditees, it is the high-impact ones, the high-budget ones, that are lagging behind the improvement trend. It is the smaller entities that get more clean audits. It's the smaller entities that have driven more improvements over the course of the last 4 years. So there has to be significant effort placed on these high-impact auditees if we are to translate all the work that's going into improving audit outcomes into the lived reality of citizens. The legislature sector, which is not governed by the PFMA, but rather by the Financial Management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act, FAMPLA, we've pulled out for analysis for a particular reason. Well, first of all, they operate under a different dispensation. But if we look at that sector, we believe that it's crucial that every single legislature attains a clean audit, because then they can speak with authority when they exercise oversight on departments and entities within their domain. They have a particularly important role to ensure that they oversee executive action, that they perform specific oversight functions that relate to various aspects of government operations. It is these legislatures that must ensure that government is accountable for its decisions and is transparent in its dealings, and that government is responsive. So it's important that they lead by example. Pleasing to note that there have been significant improvements in the outcomes of the legislature sector. Out of the 9 legislatures plus the National Parliament, 9 clean audits and only one, which is in the Northwest, that is lagging behind the improvement trend. But I think a very pleasing outcome, because it says that at least 9 of the legislatures can now genuinely lead by example in terms of transparency and accountability. And that brings with it the authority that's necessary to hold others accountable. The next slide deals with an analysis of the state-owned enterprises. Here we've pulled out the entities that are listed in Schedule 2 of the PFMA. On that list, there are 21 entities. If you take out Telkom, which is not in our mandate, and you take out SA Express, which has been liquidated, you get to 19. Out of those 19, the AGSA audits 15 directly. However, we've included on the slide the outcomes of the 4 that we don't audit, being Eskom, the IDC, Broadband Infraco, as well as ATNS. They are the air traffic controller, air traffic navigation services, I beg your pardon. The outcomes for these 19 Schedule 2 entities, which are the ones that have got significant budgets, significant responsibilities, but also the ability to attract and remunerate and therefore retain top talent to conduct their affairs. These outcomes indicate that there's significant work to be done if we are to improve the strength, the integrity, the transparency, accountability, and even performance of these institutions. You got one clean audit in this sector, and that is the DBSA. And DBSA has maintained its clean audit outcome for a number of years now. If we consider what we know about the performance of the DBSA, which is generally very good, and we consider the stability of the board of DBSA, which is pretty stable, and we consider that over the last year they've had a change of CEO with a well-ordered, predictable leadership shift, it tells a story about how entities should be operating with stability and with ongoing excellence. You can match transparency and accountability with performance. DBSA for us tells a story that the things we as AGSA keep professing as being necessary in every public institution are not just desirable, but they're also attainable. Most of the state-owned entities operate in the area of unqualified with findings. That means that they can get their debits and credits correct. However, they struggle with performance information and particularly with compliance, especially in the area of procurement management and supply chain management. There are 2 entities with qualified audit outcomes and 2 with disclaimed audit outcomes. The ones that were outstanding when we completed our analysis, you would know that the SAA group, those audits are now the subject of engagement within Parliament, with our team having continued to catch up with those audits now that the financials have been submitted. And Eskom was also completed subsequently and tabled in Parliament as well. I'd like to move on now to an area of relating to performance information, but I'll start with just some background of why we've done what we've done, because our report this time around, honourable members, will look somewhat different from what you've seen. And I think that's important to note, because if we're talking about a PFMA sector that is able to get the debits and credits right, 74% of them can account for financial resources. It does give us the opportunity to strengthen our own insight on what happens on the delivery side. Over the years, we've reported audit findings and weaknesses in the management of infrastructure projects. We've also raised findings on the lack of preventative infrastructure maintenance, which affects the delivery of services. And these findings and concerns were evident in different sectors at national and provincial level. This time, we decided as Team AGSA to dig deeper, to try and understand the problems and to understand their root causes better, so that we could offer richer insight to the people that have been appointed as the stewards of the relevant institutions and the relevant resources. Team AGSA spent significant time on projects in education, in health, in human settlements, in the water sector, in transport, as well as looking at projects in key government buildings. The projects were inspected by multidisciplinary audit teams, so you didn't have financially trained auditors going to inspect projects on their own. The investment that we've been making over a number of years, as the honourable members know, has been about diversifying our skill set and ensuring that we do have experts that walk with us and allow us to understand the things that we're looking at even better. These teams went to visit many projects right across the country, and right in different provinces. They also were able to select projects because we audit the provinces, we audit national departments, but we also audit different entities. So here you have the benefit of an AGSA that audits the entire sphere of government and is able to look at things across institutions. We've deepened our understanding of what goes wrong in projects across the project lifecycle: planning, project implementation, project management, as well as commissioning of projects. Some insight on the things that we found as we went about looking at projects. In the 2023 audit year, we visited no less than 137 infrastructure projects across the country, looking at those sectors that I spoke about a minute ago. And the projects we looked at also included those projects where the departments of public works and infrastructure were responsible as implementing agents. So at least 67 of these projects related to instances where the departments of infrastructure and public works were engaged. Our audit work incorporated site visits to inspect progress and to look at the quality of projects. In 112 instances, 82% of the projects we found, there were problems. And these problems were either projects were delayed, or there were cost overruns, or construction work was not at the right quality, or there were delays in commissioning and putting to use the projects that had already been completed. And on this slide, we share with you a couple of examples, but our report does detail quite a lot more examples. Not all of them, but a lot more examples, which I would invite the honourable members to read, to give you a sense of the type of things we found. In the Northwest, the Department of Public Works was responsible for a project at Lerotleng Primary School. There we found delays, cost overruns, and quality issues. The story goes that the construction of the school commenced in December of 2016, with a planned completion date of January 2020. In September 2020, after spending 12.69 million rand, the contract of this initial contractor was terminated due to poor quality workmanship. And since then, a replacement contractor has still not been appointed, and the project has been stopped due to ongoing legal disputes between the department and the first contractor. During our site visit in March 22 and in June 2023, we observed substandard construction work. Walls were collapsing in the same direction, which the quantity surveyors and engineers will tell you means that the walls were simply not strong enough to resist the wind. Significant remedial work will therefore have to be taken on, with increased costs and further delay in the completion of the school. And as a result, what you have is that despite the initial appropriation of funding and the initial allocation of responsibility to do this, the learners that should have been benefiting from this project are not. They still have to contend with overcrowding in their classrooms, which ultimately affects the quality of learning. There are a number of other examples in the report, and I do hope that you will find it useful. The impact of what we've seen is that these delays not only increase costs and result in financial losses at a time when we can least afford it, they result in compromised lived experience of people, learners in overcrowded classrooms, ablution facilities that do not work within schools, such that sanitation services are not there and the dignity that should be afforded to learners is not there. You've got residents that end up drinking unsafe water because the water infrastructure projects have not been completed on time and at the right quality. You've got insufficient road and rail infrastructure for public and for freight transport, which affects the entire economy, affects specific sectors as well. The slow delivery of housing, we've seen in the human settlement sector, there are average delays of 45 months on projects. You've got government buildings that go unattended in terms of maintenance, where those projects, money is appropriated, budgets are spent, and yet those projects are delayed by, on average, 46 months. We've also looked at, as I said, health and education, but also at the water sector. All this work was done such that we could understand what goes wrong, what are the root causes to these problems. And what we've come back with remains things we've said before: lack of proper needs assessments and feasibility studies, and actually sticking to what those studies reveal, lack of coordination amongst the different players within a project, lack of accountability of holding contractors accountable when they don't perform. But we've also seen that there's still an opportunity for improved monitoring and enforcement by the regulatory bodies that are responsible within the infrastructure sphere. I think it's always good to also look at instances where things do go well. And so what we've seen is that the presidency, working with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, as well as Infrastructure South Africa, the entity that was set up, they've done some good work in improving the delivery of projects. We've seen some good practices, especially in the projects to deliver student accommodation within the higher education sector. In these projects, these 3 projects that are on your screen right now, you'll see that the expenditure came in within budget, the dates of completion were as had been planned, and the quality of what was delivered was consistent with what had been initially committed to. We're not convinced that it's an accident that these projects were being managed by the DBSA, who were key implementing agents and key partners in the steering committee meetings that allowed a discipline for ongoing monitoring of these projects from planning into execution right until commissioning. So what we know is that it is possible for these projects to run properly if those disciplines are put in place. The next slide, I think, will interest the honourable members, but I'd like to frame it by saying that the work we do as AGSA on performance information has led us to an even stronger conviction that it is quality performance information that sits between South Africa and delivery of services, between South Africa and the realization of our ambitions. Here's a case in point. The National Department of Health has developed the Ideal Clinic Initiative, which is now being called the Ideal Clinic Realization and Maintenance Program. And this program defines 10 components and another set of subcomponents and elements which must be present and be seen for a fully functional primary health care facility that can be regarded as ideal. And this initiative was launched in 2013 to address the deficiencies in the quality of primary health care services in South Africa and to lay a strong foundation for the implementation of the National Health Insurance Scheme in pursuit of our ambitions on universal health care coverage, which does depend on a well-functioning public primary health care system, which is an entry point into the healthcare system for many patients. In order to achieve this, primary healthcare facilities should be functioning optimally and thus requiring a combination of elements to be present in order to render them to be ideal. An ideal clinic has been defined as one that has got good infrastructure, adequate staff, adequate medicine and supplies, good administrative processes, and sufficient bulk supplies that use applicable applicable clinical policies, protocols, and guidelines. And all this to ensure that there is a provisioning of quality healthcare services to the community. The 2019 to 2024 Medium-Term Strategic Framework, the MTSF, included an outcome relating to universal healthcare coverage for all South Africans. Under this outcome, one of these interventions was to improve the quality of primary healthcare services through the implementation of this program, the ICRM program. It states that 100% of the primary healthcare facilities across South Africa must have attained or maintained their ideal clinic status by 2024. In order to achieve this, the provincial departments of health across the country included the ideal clinic status rate as one of their key performance indicators and targets, and that was sitting in their annual performance plans and their annual performance reports. The performance reports of provincial departments indicated that, as at March 2023, 59% of the primary healthcare facilities in South Africa had achieved their ideal clinic status. And this is what was reported by the different provincial departments. Through our audits on performance information, which our job is not to profess on whether there's good performance or bad performance. Our job is not even to opine on a policy. Our job is merely to say the information that is being presented to those that must assess performance, is it reliable? Our job is to give assurance on whether there is credibility on that information. In the same way as we do on financial information, we do that for performance information. Is this information reliable? Can the person using it to assess performance, to course correct, to support, can that person rely on it? So what we did was that through our audits of these departments of health across the country, we looked at whether or not what they were reporting is credible, so that whoever uses their report can rely on that report or not. The audit of Limpopo is not yet completed, as I indicated when I did the outcomes. So we're unable to articulate a message on that. If you look at this slide, it tells you that the Western Cape has reported that 81% of their clinics have achieved the ideal status. If you look at Gauteng, it tells you that they've reported 97% has been attained. We've been able, through audit evidence, to confirm that that information is credible. So Western Cape, Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, we can confirm that the information that they are putting out is correct. The trouble here, and this is why we did this work, the trouble here is that in KZN, in Northwest, in Northern Cape and Mpumalanga, we were unable to obtain enough audit evidence to confirm whether what they are reporting as having been achieved is reliable. So we are unable to say whether Mpumalanga has attained this 81% that they are reporting on. Similarly, we are unable to say whether the 93% in KZN has been attained. Now, with an ambition as important as that for South Africa, with the allocation of resources and with the designation and allocation of these responsibilities to the different provincial departments, it's crucial that there be credible information that can help us all understand how we are moving in the journey towards improving the quality of the facilities at the primary healthcare level. And I guess on the next slide, we then, that was just an example of one of the reasons why we do this work. Thank you. As you know, over many years, we've reported on how performance information tends to not get the attention it deserves. There's more attention paid to financial information and not so much to performance information. The PFMA is very clear. Accounting officers and accounting authority have to compile quality financial information, and they have to compile quality performance information. That remains their primary responsibility. And they need to do so with the support of their senior managers, with the support of internal audit and audit committees. Our job as AGSA is to look at that information and confirm whether or not it is credible. The processes that underpin performance information, planning, monitoring, and reporting, those processes are well designed, moving from the National Development Plan to the MTSF to the annual performance plans of different entities and departments, who then must report on a quarterly basis to the Executive Authority and even to the legislature on how they are performing. And on an annual basis, they give us a report which we confirm the credibility thereof, which then reaches the oversight machinery. And the APPs and the APRs, those are prepared in accordance with frameworks that have already been set and legislated on with guidelines that are clear. Ours is to assess whether or not in preparing that information and presenting that information, those frameworks have been complied with and whether that information is credible. We don't judge whether or not performance is good. Ours is to say if the information can be relied upon. And yes, I'm aware I'm saying it for a second time. Without credible, regular...
Maybe it's based on the challenge you have. So the emphasis is that don't think that we are after you on your performance.
Yes.
We are checking on reliability of information.
Yes.
So that's the point that you want to emphasize.
Yes, Chair. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. There are a lot of instances where we have to reiterate this point, and maybe it's because as AGSA we've decided to start looking more deeply at this area to give better insight and to use what we know to influence better decisions within the system. And so our report's starting to look very different, and some people start to ask, but why are you doing this? What is all this? And all it is, we have to keep reminding our auditees, it is about confirmation of credibility. Over many years, we've been saying that performance information doesn't get the attention it deserves. One of the key indicators is the quality of performance information that's submitted to us. At the beginning of the audit, the majority of accounting officers and accounting authority submit financial that is not credible. Through the audit process, when we find misstatements, they then correct them and then are able to publish better performance reports. That's fine to publish a credible performance report at the end of the day. But our issue is this. Accounting officers, internal audit and audit committees must worry about performance information right across the year. Because if they don't have a credible year-end report, it means they don't have a credible quarterly report. So they are not able to monitor performance in different sections of that institution. They are not able to course correct as things change, and they are unable to assess how performance has run in different departments that they are responsible for. Some of the things that we've raised over the years have been that there are inadequate systems to collate information. So some of the issues are about manual processes that are quite onerous. We believe that the invitation is for investment to be put in place by accounting officers to ensure they can collate the information that's required. Not to opt out of doing the work, but to rather be seized with saying, how do I, as accounting officer who's responsible for credible performance information, how do I put in systems that allow me to get there? We're seeing that there isn't enough attention to that. And as a result, what some accounting officers will do is they'll say, if they can't give us credible performance information or credible evidence on what they're reporting, they simply take out some of these indicators because they don't want an audit finding. So they'll say, well, I don't want an AG finding that says my report is not credible, so I'm taking this out, and I'm going to manage my performance off the books. It's not going to form part of my annual performance plan or my annual performance report, which goes into Parliament. That's a problem, because if you do not have a credible, complete performance plan and report, it's going to be difficult to assess whether or not the resources that are being allocated are adequate, because there are things happening elsewhere outside of the budget and outside of the performance and that also compromises transparency. It also compromises accountability. We've also seen that even indicators and targets that are supposed to happen to be cascaded to different provinces through the sectors. Where there's disagreement, accounting officers take those out instead of agreeing amongst each other on how we're going to track something that's important to all of us in education, all of us in health. And as I've said, we find that audit committees and internal auditors don't spend enough time and attention on this area. They worry about the debits and credits and not so much about this. And we would also indicate to you that we're seeing executive authorities and portfolio committees also not paying enough attention to this area. They do worry about financial information, but not enough about this. Fortunately, stemming from a number of years of doing this and engaging with different stakeholders, we're now working much more closely with the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation in reviewing the drafts of annual performance plans and sharing our insights with them so that the quality of the performance plans can start to improve. And I do hope that within the parliamentary system, you're starting to see the benefit of that collaboration between ourselves and DPME. This slide, honourable members, sets out some examples of what happens when the weaknesses in performance, planning, monitoring and reporting are not attended to. We find that the information that is reported is not reliable. So, for example, in the Department of Public Works, one of their targets related to making savings or registering savings on the amount of money that they were spending on private leases. You'll know that over the last 2 audit cycles, we've highlighted this area of very expensive private leases that are entered into within that sector. We've even issued material irregularities on financial losses being incurred because the market rate is so much lower than the rate being paid to some of these private lessors. So the target within the department was to say, we will save 100 million rand. We will save, that's our target, we will save 100 million rand on private leases. So we think it's good that they're attending to this, right? And then they report that they've achieved 165 million rand. If that is true, we would want to be able to applaud them because then they've overrun the target. The problem is that as AGSA, we are unable to offer any assurance on the reliability of that information because the information that was given to us was not supported by evidence, so we can confirm that it's credible. So for yourselves, as the honourable members that must now oversee the performance of the department, you're left without information that allows you to assess whether or not what is being reported is credible. Important targets such as the creation of jobs. Similarly, in the Department of Transport, there was a target of creating 10,000 jobs. The reported achievement was 11,000 jobs. And unfortunately, we were unable to confirm the reliability of it. And you'll see on that slide also similar matters relating to significant achievements that are reported around the maintenance of roads or patching potholes in different provinces. And we would want to be able to applaud what is being done, but the problem is we are unable to confirm the reliability of it. Some of the things we're seeing is that key performance indicators are taken out. As I indicated on the last slide, some of the things are now being managed off the books, they'll say. But it's important things, such as the delivery of textbooks. In no less than 4 provincial departments of education, this indicator of delivering textbooks was simply taken out of the annual performance report because accounting officers said, no, I don't want an AG finding on reliability. Now, if we appreciate what performance information is supposed to be helping us do, which is to ensure that the things we set out in our MTSF and prioritize as we allocate budgets and resources, those things are being done. When you've got 4 provincial accounting officers taking out these targets because they say, I don't want an AG finding on reliability, you have no way of really tracking whether what they ever say to anybody in terms of attainment of those targets is credible. And then it takes many, many years to figure out that it wasn't being done, or you have to rely on anecdotal stories of textbooks not being delivered. Another example of what happens when performance planning, monitoring, and reporting are not properly attended to. We see that there may be a target that is reported to have been achieved at a certain level, and the budget is spent, and there's a big mismatch. So, in provincial education departments, what we looked at was infrastructure development. And there was a target that was set, and then the reported achievement was 49%, but the budget spend was 94%. Now, there may be very good reasons for that. Maybe the budget was ultimately cut, and it was not adequate to meet the intended objectives. But there may be something else going on. Maybe the money is going to something else that's off the books. But say without information, you're unable to assess whether or not there are adequate resources being put to this particular imperative. Similarly, something as important as providing district health services. The people doing the work there may be doing everything they're supposed to do and achieving this target of 51%. But then they've spent 100% of the budget. Now, we're not sure if the problem is the budget, or the problem is the target, or the problem is the achievement. In an environment where we have to be seized with making difficult decisions about how to allocate scarce resources, it's crucial that this area of performance planning, resource and benefit of credible information. The next slide, honorable members, we share with you as an example of the type of work that Team AJSA has been able to do. You'll know that over time we've invested in a...
Sorry. Members say those who are veteran have lost you.
They've lost us.
Technical expertise. Check.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
No, that's important because this has been published as, what's it?
I will have to check with them.
Are you managing at the back? Sound. Network. Can you afford you a 5 minute break so that you can deal with the problem? Corona.
Yes.
It looks like we're back, honorable members online. Sorry for the hiccup. It looks like the problem was in connectivity, which was lost in the precinct. We have since recovered, so we're going to mainly get back to where the AG was. Whether you'd want to probably sum up on the previous slide and then to the one which is here. I'm told that Honorable Matuba's hand is up on virtual. Honorable Matuba, I'm advised that your hand is up.
She's on mute.
She's on mute, yeah?
Yes.
Honorable Matuba,
Yes. Very good.
Honorable Matuba. Are you fine? Yeah. No. Huh?
Honorable Singh, just check anyone of you can hear you.
Honorable Matuba? The hands is off. Honorable Singh?
That's on.
Honorable Singh, are we audible enough? We're fine, eh? Can anyone
They still not on it.
Can anyone on virtual indicate our audibility?
Testing, 1, 2.
We can't. Nothing is coming. Bwana Yesu Mashaka. Recording is in progress. Recording in progress. Yeah.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's coming now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. AG, back to you. Our
Okay.
apologies. Yeah.
No, thank you very much, Chair. So on the previous slide, it was simply some examples of what happens when the attention that's required for performance planning, monitoring, and reporting is not adequate. We were trying to just give some practical examples of what happens on the ground around reliability of performance information, incompleteness of performance information and indicators that are sitting in the annual performance plans, matters around monitoring performance, resource allocation decisions that are not being informed by credible information. And we were also highlighting that over time, the ability to meet our stated goals and ambitions then gets compromised if we continue to neglect this area of performance information. I'd like to move on to the next slide, which I must start by acknowledging that when we met with the honourable members and yourself, Honourable Chair, about 2 years ago to deal with some strategic planning, and we shared with you that we were focusing more on value chains, taking advantage of the fact that we audit across a system. We audit departments, national and provincial. We audit entities. We wanted to start looking across the system. Your guidance to us was, yes, that was good, but do focus on data. And it was one of the things that you challenged us on, to say, you know, we'd like to see you do more work in the area of data analytics. What we're able to share with you is an example of the type of thing we've been able to do. So we've picked out the higher education and training portfolio, not because we want to pick on it, but because it's a good example of the type of insight that Team HSA is able to deliver. We audit in that entire sector. We audit all of the CETAs, all 21 of them. We audit the Department for Higher Education and Training. We audit the National Skills Fund. We audit the NSFAS, and we also audit all of the TVET colleges, which was a take-on project that we started about 10 years ago. Whilst we don't audit the 26 universities, we do have a line of sight on their audits. All of that helps us to see entities not in their silos, but to see across the value chain. So what we've done, we ran some data analytics across the TVET sector because we audit all of them. And we said, what can we see around opportunities to improve the quality of spend? Because South Africa invests significantly in this sector. And we all hope that the investments we're making are going to help young people realize their own dreams and ambitions, but equip them to participate in the economy with skills that are relevant for today and importantly for tomorrow, and skills that are designed to help us meet our own economic growth ambitions as a country. So we said, okay, what's happening in the TVET sectors? Let's look at the top 10 courses for which students have enrolled within TVETs. So what we found was that if you look at that the dark blue bar, we found that the majority of students in TVET colleges have enrolled for studies in engineering, which is a good thing. Then we said, okay, what else are they registering for? We found that tourism shows up as a significant area of enrollment. But we also found probably the next highest would be office administration. So we started to ask the question, does this link with the skills that South Africa needs tomorrow? Because these young people will come out of that sector and enter the workplace, hopefully. Then we said, what is NSFAS doing? To what extent is the investment that NSFAS make consistent with these ambitions for what skills we need? So we took the data and we superimposed it on the bursaries that are being given by NSFAS and checked what are these students that are funded by NSFAS registered for in these TVET colleges. And again, that's the benefit of auditing the entire sector. So what we found was that tourism is the highest representation in terms of the sector where NSFAS funds students at TVET. The next lot is office administration. NSFAS funds a high number of students that go into courses on office administration in TVET colleges. Nothing wrong with those two courses, but the question is to what extent are they linked to the critical skills that we've highlighted as being required for the future. And what we see are opportunities for us to start correcting that, because if we don't do it, we're going to waste significant opportunity and we're not going to get a good return on the investment that we're making in that sector. Another piece of work that we did was to look at the CETAs, because we audit all of them. And They tend to operate in silos. We have the benefit of now being able to look across these institutions. And what we found was that among SETAs, there's a duplication of effort. There are learners, individuals who are part of learnership programs at multiple SETAs at the same time. And that was never the intention. The idea was that you go into a learnership program and then you articulate into the workplace. What we're finding is that at the same time, somebody will be in multiple SETAs. So they're double dipping. At the same time, somebody will be at multiple SETAs or at SETA, at NISFAS, and at Funzali Shaka as a beneficiary. Now, those were meant to be discrete programs where individuals participate and move on to the next thing. Yes, you could blame the learners, but the reality is many of them don't get other jobs, so this becomes a way of generating income. What's critical is that the SETAs themselves start to operate differently and not just as silos so that they can minimize this duplication. We've also seen that there are learners who are on a learnership from a SETA, but then when you check their ID number at Home Affairs, that ID number is not there, which begs the question of who are these individuals that are being funded. Worryingly, we also found learners who are on a learnership program getting a stipend, but then are deceased at the Department of Home Affairs, which asks significant questions about key inefficiencies within that process. So crucial that the database integration, the collaboration and coordination within the sector be attended to. Anecdotally, many of us have heard about learners who are in multiple SETAs at the same time. Here, through the work of Team HSA, we're able to give you the statistics. No less than 23,000 of them are in multiple SETAs at the same time. So the matter is quite pressing because that's significant inefficiency, significant duplication of effort that needs to be pushed back. And the journey, we believe, is about making sure we get optimal quality of spend and optimal benefit to citizens within the country. We believe that these insights which we share on this sector, this very crucial sector, crucial for our economy, crucial for our human development index, crucial for individual lives, we believe that this insight can help those that run the institutions, that oversee the sector, do so even better. We've done similar analyses for other sectors, and I'm hoping that through the different portfolio committees where you participate, you're starting to see these insights because members of Team HSA have been so energized by this work. And you would have seen many of my dynamic and smart colleagues presenting to you on matters similar to this. A message in our general report this year, just like we did last year, relates to what we've termed pressure on the fiscus. And the central message is this. When you've got fiscal pressure and economic growth problems as we have, it becomes ever more important to ensure that the resources we do have available are being spent in the best possible way. It's ever more urgent that we push back on the things that deal with duplication, leakage, but also just wastage. And the wastage that we've been able to report on over time, we see persists in different areas. Either poor payment practices, we pay suppliers late and incur penalties and interest, we pay for goods that we've not received or that are of poor quality, we duplicate payments and overpay. All of those things we need to start pushing back on urgently. We've also seen losses resulting where the procurement processes end up with appointing suppliers who are overcharging, so we don't get the most cost-effective options. We're seeing instances of these sub-commercial lease arrangements in the leasing sector with private leases, where government ultimately overpays for the buildings they do occupy. Software licenses where there are payments and yet those licenses are not being used. We've also raised matters on the infrastructure aspects, where standing time is being paid and that's not part of the contract, or contractors are being paid when they are not even on site anymore, and also the poor maintenance of infrastructure. All that is to say that these things we've been seeing as financial losses when we do our audits tell us that there is significant opportunity for the public sector to improve the quality of spend, to start safeguarding resources and push back on the wastage that is becoming more and more evident. We've also highlighted that the borrowing programs of state-owned entities do put pressure on the fiscus, and we need to keep finding ways to stem the growing pressure on the fiscus arising from those entities. Another key feature that is putting pressure on government finances, you recall we talked about that last year, which is the claims against government departments, particularly in the healthcare sector, relating to medico-legal claims. At the moment, the number is sitting at 68 billion rand, which is a burden to departments of health, who then have to take out money from the service delivery budget to settle those claims. Crucial that we limit instances where claims will arise. Also crucial that we manage claims properly when they do arise, putting in place the key disciplines of document management and of settling quickly, fairly and quickly, so that we don't run with costs that ultimately end up as wasted. I know that by the time we get to this part of the presentation, your questions would be, okay, so what have you done, AG? And so I get to that part. With the amendments to the Public Audit Act, which we're now, this is the fourth year we're reporting on the MI process, the honourable members will recall that we started this journey with very small number of entities in PFMA. We started with 16 in 2019. We've now been implementing this instrument, getting better and better at it. Where we are is that in PFMA, we've identified a total of 266 material irregularities. Of those, the majority relate to instances of financial loss that is incurred mostly in the area of procurement and also in instances where we've seen fraud, suspicions of fraud. Some of the MIs relate to harm to the public. So an example would be where we see that a project has been completed and it's not yet been handed over to the beneficiaries. There's an example that I keep saying to the team at AGSA that will stay in my own heart for a very long time. In one of the provinces, the team was auditing the books, as they do. They saw that on the books there is an asset of an investment in a neonatal ICU ward. And so they could have ended there and said, okay, does it exist? Was it paid for? Is it correctly shown in the books? But they didn't stop there. They said, we want to go and actually see this facility. It was installed 6 years ago, and it's been in the books for 6 years. We want to go and see it. So off they went to go and look at this thing. They found that the facility was not being used. So they started to ask certain questions of the accounting officer around, but, why are we not using this facility? And the answer came and said, no, we haven't hired the people, the specialist nurses and doctors that can treat babies that need this level of care. And so in the sort of audit query processes, the team then arrived at a view that actually this is a material irregularity. It might not be financial loss because the assets are there, the equipment is there, but it is substantial harm to the public because they're not benefiting from the investment that has been put in place. It's also misuse of a material public resource because you're not using this investment, this public investment, to benefit the community. Fortunately, in that instance, 6 years later, the accounting officer went to fill those vacancies that were there, and now that neonatal ICU ward is operational, and the babies in that community can have a chance of surviving. So those are the type of matters that will not show up in the rands and cents. We tell you about the material financial loss, but they do show you about the problems we see in the system, but importantly, how this instrument is helping us contribute to remedying some of these problems. 240 of these MIs are material financial loss related. That total loss has been estimated at 14 billion rand. Because accounting officers tend to act when we raise these MIs. We do get instances where they resolve the MIs by going to get the resources back, by disciplining people, by reporting matters to law enforcement, by responding in the way that they should. As a consequence of the MI process and the responsiveness of accounting officers, we can now indicate to the honourable members that 1.29 billion rand of financial losses have been recovered. R500 million rand of financial losses have been prevented through contract cancellations, and 700 million rand of financial loss is in the process of being recovered. A total of that is 2.5 billion rand of resource protection that comes out of the effort of Team AGSA using this instrument. Remember, I said that financial loss was estimated at 14 billion rand, and if you compare it to 2.5 billion rand of recovery, it's a pretty big gap. What it tells us is that, yes, it's good that the MI process is working, that the efforts of Team AGSA are bringing money back into the fiscus, but it can never be the adequate solution to our problems. There has to be attention to preventing the problems in the first instance, and then also acting as soon as problems arise. And that is the duty of accounting officers. So whilst we celebrate that our team, whose audit bill into the fiscus every year is now 4.5 billion rand, has now contributed to resource protection to the tune of 2.5 billion rand, we also quickly assert that it is urgent that accounting officers act on these matters even before their MIs. Because the matters are really things we've reported on before. It's procurement management, payment management, resource management, revenue management, interest and penalties, things that are not that complex to deal with if there were proper attention to ensuring that there are preventative controls. I'm now getting to the end of my presentation, honourable members. I've talked about the audit outcomes, the performance information, and given you a flavour for how we've dealt with it differently this time, looking at projects, looking at programs, and I hope that that message has become quite clear. I've also shared with you what we've achieved using the MI process. But if you look at the whole story, you'll realise that it's not that far different. The issues at hand in terms of what needs to be sorted out within the accountability ecosystem, those remain the same. We've got to address this culture of no accountability and consequences. Can't rely purely on the audit process and the MI process to address consequence management. It's urgent that all in the accountability ecosystem be seized with this on an ongoing basis. We're also seeing that there's still ineffective resource management and resource protection. That needs attention across all levels within the accountability ecosystem. We've also seen that there is inadequate intergovernmental planning and coordination and support, which needs attention if we are to improve the quality of what we spend throughout the sector. Our recommendations, you would have heard before, relate to implementing the professionalization framework that was approved by Cabinet just about a year ago. With it will come instances of putting people in public institutions in those key leadership and stewardship responsibilities, people of competence, people who work conscientiously, people who operate with a sense of public service and with the right sort of ethical disposition. And we'll be able to hold them accountable. If we do that, the public sector will start to look differently, will start to perform very differently. We've put in our recommendations the need for executive authorities and committees in Parliament and the legislatures to worry much more about performance information for the reasons I set out when I was presenting that aspect. We've also highlighted that the coordinating departments, the coordinating institutions, whether it's the DPME, the National Treasury, they need to improve their own intergovernmental planning and coordination so that we can start to get to a much better level of integration across the system. And then maybe the last thing which we want to also see how we can contribute to, which is to improve the effectiveness of audit committees and internal audit functions across government, who really have tremendous potential to contribute much more impactfully in the accountability ecosystem. If we do these things, honorable members and honorable chairs, we believe that we'll be able to improve the quality of spend, and we'll be able to start closing the confidence gap between public institutions and the people that they're meant to serve. Thank you very much. I've now come to the end of my presentation. The report is being tabled today, and it'll become, I'm sure it's available to you now. And of course, over the next couple of days, we'll be talking to different people about it as well. But I now formally hand back to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, AG, for the extensive outline of your report, which was seeking to summarize the more than 100 pages that we have of the report as tabled here today. And that summary came to us on the nature of slides, and we have allowed you that period so that you could extensively inform the committee as to how have you stood through, one, to the value of your strategy, two, to honor your plan as the prescript approved when you came to us, three, that the standard set in terms of your acquisition on these areas is an acceptable one. And we have seen that in terms of the Public Audit Act, there are no areas which you have emphasized which would impinge in as far as your role given by the Constitution is concerned. Meaning, therefore, in the growth of our democracy and entrenchment of such, we stand true to the value of our Constitution. So I think we must appreciate that. Back to you, members. There is the report of the Office of the Auditor-General. As you would want to ask some questions to understand and probably to suggest certain things, I would allow you time to do so. Those who have a few areas to raise. Our time is 11:45, so we have some time to ponder into the report. Are there any hands online?
Yes, Honorable Singh.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Once again, greetings to you and our colleagues, and the AG and her team, and everybody else that's there. And once again, apologies for me not being with you physically today. I think the main reason for me to be physical was the lovely dinner that's been promised by the AG for tonight. But I'll take a rain check on that one. Thank you very much for the presentation. A couple of questions. The one, Honorable Chair and AG, is, I'm always concerned about disclaimers and disclaimed with finding. And I'd like to know what kind of interventions do we take place? Because, I found from my years of experience that a number of them want disclaimers, and, they lose documents and get rid of documents intentionally. So you cannot make any findings on those set of accounts. The second question, I might have missed this along the line because of the network break. Is there a figure that you can give us, AG, of the total irregular, wasteful, and unauthorized expenditure, say, for March 2023 compared with 22 and even a year before that, but even with 22. So we try and get a sense of the total amount of irregular, wasteful, and unauthorized expenditure. The third question would be your view, general view on performance and value for money in government. When one looks at the specific that you've provided, but what's your general view? And are there any specific cases you can mention where you feel that we are really not getting value for money in terms of how much was spent within the specific department or SOE? The next one will be the slide on insights, higher education and training portfolio. Now, I think, Chairperson, we need to appreciate these insights into these various departments. But I want to know to what extent are these shared with the ministers responsible for those departments, together with the accounting officers, and together with the responsible portfolio committees, because that is where the interrogation can take place. I note that you go very, very detailed. In fact, when you're talking about NASFAS and trying to measure the courses being offered vis-a-vis job opportunities out there, I mean, that's great work. But to what extent does your office sit and talk to the respective departments about it so that they can do something? And then also allied to that is the internal audit functions within those departments. I mean, do they actually look at the kind of things that you are pointing out here? And if not, I think we need to ask why not, so that there is a template. The template that you use to come up with this information must be a template that they should also be using to try and identify the issues that you have. And my very last question, Chair, would be the slide on MIs. I'm very pleased to see there's some criminal investigations and some supplier contracts stopped, but I'd like to know about certificates of debt. Thank you very much, and thank you for a great presentation from the Office of the AG. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. We're going to allow the AG to collect the number of questions so that you could somewhat respond on this, so don't allow some kind of a repeat on them. Is there any other hand on line?
Yes, Honorable Matuba.
Honorable Matuba, my intention is just to finish with them, so that if we miss them at some stage, would have collected their own questions. Yeah. Honorable Matuba.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good morning to the team, the AG team, members of the Portfolio Committee. Chair, let me also welcome the report by the AG, and safe to say congratulations. We are so proud of you, Team AGSA. Chair, with regard to the presentation made, one was listening to the presentation, and quickly, I'm not quite sure whether I'm a slow or fast learner in this instance, but quickly, something said to me that if I am to ask the AG whether should we possibly review, especially talk to the Department of Labor, review the legislation. I am saying this because in many instances, when you appoint accounting officers who does not have necessary capacity to do the job, it's very difficult for you to fire that particular person because of certain laws and processes that are taking place in our country. But for the politician, it will be easy to say that let's remove, let's change, let's reshuffle, let's do this and that. But for the officials, it becomes a bit difficult. Whether should we start as a country to look into the laws that we have in the country and begin to say these ones are not assisting us in professionalizing our institutions. Maybe if I can get clarity on that one. And again, what one could say around the issue of the accounting officers, or in all spheres where we are, the issue is two: whether you employ a person who is a thug or if you employ a person who is incompetent. In all fairness, for me, it was like, if we can conduct a study in the country to check whether we have necessary skills that are relevant for these positions and how to deal with them, in all fairness. Otherwise, we will be year in and year out, we'll have those who are accounting officers who hides info deliberately, or you have those accounting officers who doesn't even know what to do with information. You can have information, as long as that information, you are not able to interpret the information and analyze the information, it's as good as we don't have somebody who's capable in that particular office. If we can have that study, that assessment, maybe we agree as a country to have a every after 5 years or every after 2 years, where you have your census of some kind, the 5 years one, randomly you'll come and check whether you have people who have necessary capacity. It begs me to say that, are we leading as a country to achieve what is contained in the Agenda 2063 in terms of skills development? Are we heading there as a country, or really are we going backward? But it is more, I know, of the fact that even certain things, one would question them. And what is great about the presentation, when you take the education sector, in all fairness, one was worried whether are we as government investing where it is necessary. And with this side of a piece of information that we got from the AG, I so wish that in our spare time we can also get more detailed report around all sectors and get to understand what is taking place in those sectors. And I fully agree with the AG on the issue of the APPs. In all fairness, at some point, I serve in one of the committees, and then I asked, we have spent 100% on this particular project, and you are saying that we have met the target. We haven't met the target, but we have spent 100%. Also, it problem that we should look into. We should be very, very concerned whether are we not planning properly, or whether are we using money for the sake of spending money and being able to produce the financial statements at the end of the year. I think that also needs an in-depth analysis. And lastly, Chair, on the issue of the duplication, your leakage, your losses, in all fairness, when one is listening to the presentation, you go to water and sanitation sector, you get the issue of water leak, you get to education, you get duplications where people will be in different projects. Why are the cities, why are we not finding a system? Why are we not using technology? I mean, it's like we are so backward as a country, where we can have all systems linked. When I was born in 1972, the system that should say that I'm still alive. These are my education qualifications in terms of education department, in terms of health department. Everything should be interlinked. I don't know whether if we are as we are, whether the DDM model that we are talking about, whether it will find expression in whatever we do. I think, Chair, aligning everything that we do with the APPs, with everything, I think we should not allow account officers to do their own APPs. At that particular level, there must be a team somewhere where it involves politicians, of course, where it involves everybody, so that when you agree and sign the APPs, you know that everybody who's in the ecosystem is able to take responsibility. I don't know, we call ourselves a government where citizens are allowed to do that, but it's like they must also help us, our citizens, to play a critical role. Those who do have necessary skills, they shouldn't say that no, it's government and government alone. It should be our business as a society. It should be our business as South Africa. That will be my input, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Matuba, to the House. Mamukota, to be followed by Lenzan, and then at last will be Wamataf.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me greet Auditor-General and her team today here. We are, as all members are saying, proud of the work that has been done by the Office of Auditor-General. And the recognition that you are getting at INOSCO is not by chance. It's through hard work. So keep it up. We are on your side. But in terms of the reporting, you are saying that the audits, the qualified audits, are getting lesser and lesser in some areas. And that I would like to see Eastern Cape moving from where it is now, because these are good news, particularly for Eastern Cape, that it can tomorrow be seen as just like other provinces. And your reporting itself here today, even your presentation, it really gives us a peace of mind that we are going to arrest the issue of adverse findings. They're getting fewer and fewer, but at the same time, there's a moving train towards ensuring that we get the product that we want. Credibility of the information submitted is very important. That it's very critical that we have quality information which is reliable so that it can be useful for the work that is needed. And I'm saying we are at this point helping to come up with these results. But on the other hand, the rest of South Africa is looking at Auditor-General. It's worse now with this new responsibility that we've been given. The issue of governance, oversight, accountability, it should be with all state entities, so that at the end of the day, they're not getting followed as if they are children, but people must do their responsibility. I used to have a situation where Denel was reporting good results at some point in time, but now that is something of the past. Similarly to other state entities that you are responsible for. I'm saying, Chairperson, this report is clear, and we are giving marching orders in terms of us following up with our colleagues here in Parliament. But I don't think we should really waste their time. They've done the work, they are delivering. We're looking forward to the new year. We're saying to AG that they are closing this year with a high note. And we all understand, and we're all with them in doing that work. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I don't want to take your time.
Thank you, Mamukota. Over to Honorable Lenzana.
Thanks, Chairperson. Perhaps before I start drawing collations, AG, the attire says it all, ne? Yeah, it was deliberate.
From which side?
It was deliberate.
From which side? From you.
Come and the Chairperson. Why does the Chairperson want to throw words into my mouth? You know, Chairperson, after I had applied my mind into this report, I felt so proud that one way of me being part of it was to put on this suit in appreciation of this report. I don't want to politic about the color of the suit deliberately. AG, thank you so much. It has always been that whenever we read your reports, they are a panacea in our aching bodies and minds. That at least when we get your report, there would be some kind of refreshment. At least I pity those who miss interaction with AGSA. Slide 5. You know, you have got these 12 or so where there is a non-submission of financial statements. And you have categorized the culprits according to years, starting with SAA group down. These are SOEs. What can be advised? Because look, talking of rationalization of SOEs, talking of even closing them down, would be for me seated here defeating the genesis of the establishment of SOEs. Chairperson, if it was according to my way as a person, we would be finding a way of going back into saying to all of us, what is it that made the government then, whichever government, thought of establishing SOEs? Why should SOEs die during our age and time? I'm thinking aloud, AG. Perhaps if you don't have a readily available answer now, you can park it perhaps for another day. But I think we have to apply our mind into this going forward. I'm looking at slide 7. Yes, yeah, I think it's slide 7. Where? This is the other one. It's also another nerve. The high impact auditors with not so good performance. And as you are correctly putting, the smaller ones are the ones. So simple putting aside these financial terms, it would be those who have too much to bite have got very little or throat problems to bite and swallow. It's too much for them. And then what do we have to do in that case? Because once more, we chairperson shouldn't be looking at breaking down, unbundling all these state-owned assets. We're still looking at ESCOM. NgesiXhosa besizothi asiyazi iyozala nkomoni. We are still observing. It is taking its own time. It is chowing more money just on unbundling. We are even unable to keep track on the accountability of that unbundling. I am sure down the line you will be coming to us as AGSA to say, look, esixhoseni ke kuthiwa inkunzi ezimbini azigqubi ebuhlantini obunye, because now you are facing there at Eskom a situation where you have got this one who is responsible for unbundling and doing all that, and you have got this other one who is at the helm of running business in Eskom. How do you collate facts and figures for auditing purposes? Would be a nightmare going forward. And I'm raising this linked to this question of the not so good audit outcomes when it comes to the high impact auditors. I'm looking at slide 11, Team AGS, Northwest NW and Western Cape, where you have managed to do site visits for impact assessment. It tells you exactly as you said, AG, that those who are in the School of Public Financial Management, they will tell you that public financial management is not only about finance management, which is debit and credits, that will matter, but it is also about performance information management. Then put together, you will be now talking public financial management, not in silos. Now you have shown us, but I believe this is just but a tip, because you haven't managed to spread your wings throughout the country. I don't know, because now I have also this responsibility of seeing to it that when you are talking action, you must talk funding. That matter. I'm not sure if Team AGSA would be having resources to spread its wings such that come this year, this time next year, when we are receiving this report, we would then be able to receive a feedback which says, at least you have managed to broaden the scope, that our audit findings are not only informed by the desktop exercises, but also by the work that we have done, as we can see the fruits. This is very good work. But now my worry is, do you have financial muscle to do it throughout? As for this one, the mismatch between expenditure and the actual performance, it's linked. It's linked. But I think Honorable Matuba touched something there, Chairperson, that there are two things. It doesn't only go now to HSA, it also going to us and government. That at some stage, AG, we may have to correctly look at qualifications, but then go beyond qualifications. Your profile, your would-be responsible individuals, both in entities and government, particularly in the management echelon, because you could be having somebody, Chairperson, who is well-schooled to be able to cheat, well-schooled to be able to spin figures, such that financial resources of government are thrown altogether. But when you go to books, everything is online. Hence, then you would have this mismatch of when you look at the expenditure on paper, it's perfect. But when you go to the actual performance on the ground, it's something, There is a department, Chairperson, in the Eastern Cape. As we speak now, they are at 79 billion behind. Imagine, 79 billion. We are left with how many months now towards the end of the financial year? But if you can go there and ask, what have you done? You would be told that almost everything has been done on paper. But when you go down there, nothing. This is exactly, where we are when we are talking the mismatch. So I'm saying this is not only a challenge. I was saying to AG Chairperson during this 5-minute break. Coincidentally, her report talks what we have been discussing at Scoag yesterday. It is exactly, which means the challenge is as big as you see. Lastly, Chairperson, this one is generic, AG. The general asset management. I was asking one department, like an ordinary man or Shalaneku, by my guy, do you know your assets? And then he says yes. Then the next question would be, Chairperson, I'm not asking in terms of numbers. Do you know, like if you ask me if I know my ship, I must tell you this one is old, this one is newly born, this one is sick, and so on and so on. And now the question is, do you know your assets for budget priority purposes? Because if we don't prioritize our budget, we would then have a situation where you would have aging infrastructure, where when you go on paper, you will be saying there are these assets, but only you find that when you get there, they are no longer usable. So I'm not sure what is it also that we can inflict into the ears and eyes and minds of the auditors so that they can take care of the asset management system, that it be, on par with the demands of the day and age. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mlenzana. Over to you, Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to you once again, AG and the team. Let me join other honorable members who thank the presentation and also the quality in the manner in which it is provided. But I think also the quality in the presentation speaks to the quality of the work that you do, because I would want to say and believe that on slide 4, the improvement that we see in the overall audit opinion is somewhat also an indication of your contribution that you've been doing in terms of your strategic outlook, and for that we want to commend you. And secondly, join others that have congratulated you on your appointment as the external auditor for the UNESCO. Chair, I just want to touch on a few points, starting with slide 5. Comrade Zembo and Honorable Singh have reflected on that. Honorable Zembo speaking mainly on delays and Honorable Singh speaking on disclaimers. If whether are there remedial actions or consequences that can be taken. But I want to take the engagement further and ask, particularly as it relates to delays, are there any cost or operational implications that the Auditor-General has to endure when these delays are being picked up and as they happen? And how are you responding to them if they are there? And maybe you can also just reflect on what are the reasons, what are the common reasons that are provided as to why are we delaying? I mean, the AG says it very well that there are time frames that are legislated, and we expect that. As Honorable Zembo says, those that are qualified to be in those positions would know and respect such legislative prescripts. On slide 7, I know also Honorable Zembo spoke to that. In terms of the high impact auditees, I will link that to slide 17 and state that I see out of the 113 billion of the claims against departments, the biggest chunk is by the same auditees. So there's also underperformance in terms of complying with audit cycle, but equally there's a huge pressure and exposure that these entities are placing the government on. So in drawing this relationship, how best can we try to pull them out through the audit process to ensure that that particular exposure is not where it is? And maybe lastly, is there a correlation between the quality of service linked to the spending or the exposure that we see, but particularly on the falling behind as far as auditing processes are concerned? Because I would think that in most cases where you are unable to account for your performance, somewhere, somehow it will be lacking. Now, when Honorable Zembo throws out a figure of how far the Eastern Cape Department is behind, and this chair will give credibility to the observations by the AG when they say the coordination of role players, in particular project management, is not where it's supposed to be. In the Scoag that Honorable Zembo is speaking of, we had requested the Department of Human Settlement and of Water and Sanitation to come and just make a presentation as far as the budget adjustment is concerned, because we believe that there's collaboration between the two. The action by one has a bearing on the outcomes of the other as far as project implementation is concerned. So I agree with your observation, AG, that maybe we need to strengthen that part. In our engagement with these departments, they agree that it's something that they were not paying attention to, and they are taking the observation away as advice that they need to strengthen that. Now, for the purpose of the AG, is there a way through your audit process that you can assist us to ensure that this observation is dealt with in terms of assisting in collaboration? Maybe when there is an audit on human settlements, top structures, and the planning as far as the human settlement township development is concerned, we are then able to say, water would have played this role. So we are also auditing this part jointly with this one. I'm putting it in simplistic terms. You put it in audit language. I'm sure that you follow what I'm saying. So we are asking for the same collaboration we are asking amongst departments. We are asking it amongst committees, with the AG being part. Is it possible? So that is the question. And if yes, we'll obviously have that discussion offline to see how best we can assist each other going forward. Chair, slide 9 speaks to 4 outstanding audits in the space of SOEs. My question would be, what is the current status? And again, like in the previous question, what are the reasons that we still have these particular challenges? And given the question that was asked by Honorable Singh, that are you depositing this with the legislative authority in those departments? Are you receiving support so that we are then able to assist this particular SOEs to move out of the red zone? Those are my inputs, Chairperson, but once again, let's appreciate the quality of work that the AG is doing. And yeah, I agree, Honorable Zembo. It's refreshing to speak to the office of the AG. Yeah, and I like how, maybe in closing, Chair, in the strategy presentation, the AG spoke about change management and how you also alter your processes, but to strengthen the work of government. It's really assisting from auditing compliance to auditing impact to auditing quality of service. So you can see that change happening gradually, but the change is consistent and it's assisting the work that we do as well. I'll give a simple example. You audited the impact in service delivery. Today you presented what NEFSAS is funding. And for me, immediately when you did that, what came to mind was the reconstruction and recovery plan by the president. He highlighted certain sectors. And then immediately you can say, are our learners aligned with this long-term strategic goal? If not, what is it that we can do? And for us as lawmakers, these are advices and notes that we are taking in terms of assisting us in formulating policy going forward. So for that, we really thank you. We appreciate it very much. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, honorable members, on the questions. I think you have asked the bulk of questions with reference to what the AG highlighted when she started with the presentation. That he is here with us today presenting a nature of the audit on 3.1 trillion rand budget for these auditees, 3.1 trillion. And if you look into that 3.1 trillion rands, you'll find out the bulk of it lies with high impact oddities, at 2.64 trillion of such, meaning therefore the outlook based on the report is saying the majority of those who are doing good lie on within, but not exclusive, within of an amount of about 360 billion rands. And the totality of such, which seek to bring an intention of her emphasis to the fact that the high impact oddities remain a huge challenge in terms of expression of the audit outcomes. Though expressly there is some improvement even in that area. Then I looked into the overall audit outcomes, AG. You'd find out that for the previous financial year, we had 126 clean audits and 183 unqualified. And then for the year to 2022-2023, we have 147 clean audits, which is a very good expressed performance. The increase is 21 auditees have improved their audit outcome to clean. You see, and then if I would following the trend, looking at the outlook, if I'm going to take a linear assessment, the linear assessment says they might have moved from yellow to green. I'm using might, because if you look into the balance between the previous financial year and the current financial year in terms of accountability, is exactly 21. You see, so the movement might have been literally from your yellow to green, which is very good, because the improvement is somewhat, it takes some kind of incremental improvement. And then, meaning therefore you still have a dip on the yellow, bringing some form of stagnation because of that movement from the other side, the right-hand side again, which is on your qualified with findings. The qualified with findings, the previous year was 80 and the current year is 69. Very good drop out of such. But that drop does not say where they've gone. You see, you don't know whether they have gone to the extreme right, but there's definitely assurance that if they've gone to the yellow still has a deficit of some kind. So we need to dig deeper as to where they've gone. You see, and the same as you go towards your left up to the extreme end, you'll find out that the actual reduction of those in the bed is a very good, well appreciated instance, something which we must well appreciate. But unfortunately, what you have referred to, 31, which has either not submitted or they are late in terms of their own submissions, and therefore the audits would be late themselves. But I find the positive contribution, which is 3, which is out of those who have been later audited. The 3 goes to add to that 162, the total of 165. And another 4 from the purple, right, the purple color, 4 you add to that 69, then the number increases to 73. And as well, you would find out that the 2 is added to the 5, which means then you get the 7. And the numbers are changing as you would deal with the actual areas that were somewhat delayed. And my problem is that still at the point which says, because you have informed us in one area that people would avoid to be audited on crucial information, and they would choose to take it out.
Recording stop.
And pulling that information out means, therefore, the credibility of the information is under question. And already you move them towards the extreme end of your actual adjudicating on those kinds of audits. It means it's a problem of discipline. It's a matter of discipline. And that discipline requires what you have ended up in terms of your recommendations at the end, because you must direct those areas, whether you're talking to the executives and say, in this area we feel that your own accounting officer or those who ought to account to him or her are not disciplined enough in terms of accountability. Well, the right information, you see that transparency, accountability are the key in terms of your ecosystem, and if that is absent, you see the state can't evaluate the value of that money which has been allocated at that level, which then creates some problem. Don't you think that there will be a stage that probably with Treasury, there might be some propositions of throwing in some penalties that relate to a hold of substantive amount to such in terms of the provision, or that coupled with what you are dealing with in terms of your MIs directed to person concerned, which is the accounting officer. I've seen in the meeting which I'm coming from now, before I got in here, that you are working together very well with the SIU, because they were reporting on some of your findings, which they are following in one other entity. And their findings are exactly on the trends that you have somewhat highlighted. So don't you think that these kinds of behavioral patterns, they're not necessarily would need you to note, to be moderate about it? You see, but to in your own form of referrals, then begin to highlight such and refer those matters to the bodies which could follow it. Because you have made a point on the executives, on the committees of parliament to follow such, and you would note there's a result. You must fight this kind of a situation, because the Minister of Finance is explicit. There's no money. But if you get there in terms of the audit, you'll find out that no. There might be some splits of money here and there, but the discipline is not there. You see, so the exercise and as well the enforcement of that discipline in terms of accountability and ensuring that the expenditure which is followed is somewhat meeting the required standard out there. That feeds into your analysis of the SOEs. When you look into the assessment in terms of your analysis of the SOEs, based on what the state has made available in terms of guarantees, and if you assess the quantum of those guarantees based on the value in terms of value proposition of the outcomes thereof, is something which needs somewhat to be followed through. You see, you say through your MIs you have discovered that about 4.6 billion rand potential loss, 14.3 billion potential loss. Not loss, potential loss. And through that potential loss, your actions have somewhat amounted to a definite amount which has worked positively on the line of savings there and there. And you have saved directly 1.29 in terms of recovery, billion rands. And the financial loss prevented
in progress.
is 56 billion rands. And the processes are on the way to recover about 0.7 billion rand, which says if your office wouldn't have gone for audit, the state would have just faced that loss, potential loss of 14.3 billion rand. What is the situation then if the state SOEs who are failing to account in terms of your own assessment would face in totality, based on your assessment on various departments, after your outlook, which reflect 386 billion rand on government guarantees, which is an exposure for SOEs currently. Some of them are failing to account while they are beholden on such guarantees by the state. So the reflection of danger on what the state loses in terms of the quantum which has been guaranteed to those who are far from accounting. While you have provided the scenario of an ecosystem which each of these entities must follow the money and account on such basis. So the failure is no longer a failure of an entity. The department concerned has failed to follow that kind of an entity. So they have responsibility in terms of the ecosystem. You see, and those who ought to as well make them account are as well to be found accountable for their failure to pin their you see, thumb for those ought to account. And therefore a movement closer to the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation, which is a very good partnership, which I think we must appreciate because it's them in the main who ought to assess the ability of the departments to meet the key performance areas and as well to observe the necessary disciplines going forward. So in appreciation, AG, I think even for us would need some kind of a period to look into a detail as to what is your report entail in totality on the exemplary areas that you have cited. You see, for example, we talk about textbooks, the problems with textbooks. You see, the nature of failure in terms of having those books arriving in good time, they impact on schooling. You see, at a particular moment. So the bearing would have been on the questions asked by Honorable Singh and Matafa to say probably the portfolio committees responsible on our side ought to deal with these matters and follow them. Your role has been to highlight those areas and to red flag them for them to be followed through. And then lastly, in the area of appreciating the actual scoping in as far as your work is concerned, which I suspect that Honorable Singh has missed, which relates to 7.62 billion rand on wasteful expenditure, which is highlighted on slide number 17, which if you link it up with what you are talking about on the estimated financial loss, which might move across to that 14, or is it separate from the 14 as a standalone amount that you have assessed, or is part to the 14.34 billion rand in terms of the financial loss which has been identified? I'm not very sure whether when you talk about it, you must talk about the different things, well, in terms of tagging, but in terms of the quantums, it might be that you are talking about the amount which is included in the very same amount of 14.34 billion rand. Thank you very much. Over to you, AG.
All right. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, for those inputs and questions. Maybe let me start where you ended off, Chair, around the numbers to clarify. So the 7.62 billion rand on slide 17 deals with the total fruitless and wasteful expenditure that has been reported by the different auditees over the 4 years on a cumulative basis. So that's what's been reported as fruitless and wasteful. Better if accounting officers were doing these recoveries themselves and preventing the problems in the first instance. So hence our point that for us as an entire state to get full value for the resources we do have in our hands, we're going to have to make sure that accounting officers apply discipline in terms of fulfilling their responsibilities as stated in the PFMA to protect resources and act as the stewards that have been appointed to look after those institutions. So maybe let me just start with the questions that Honorable Singh asked about the disclaimers. Are there interventions? Fortunately, there are fewer disclaimers within the PFMA cycle. And we'll keep looking at what we could do. But I suppose when we highlight these outcomes, we really are calling on those that monitor and oversee these entities to also act. If you've got a PRASA that's been getting a disclaimer of audit opinion a few years now, or whose audit is late and eventually still a disclaimer, I think it's probably easy to link that to the service delivery issues that you see on the ground around PRASA, which have been happening for a number of years now. So the opportunity is for all in that ecosystem of accountability to really play their part. The board, the minister, the portfolio committee in Parliament, worrying about what is it that happens within PRASA. Because they get a budget allocation every year, and that money reaches them every year. And every year their audits are late, and every year they get a most undesirable audit outcome. So I do think there may be opportunities for us to do a few things, but probably the most urgent action needs to be taken by those I've mentioned in the accountability ecosystem. The irregular expenditure, Honourable Singh, the number this year is 63.3 billion rand, the cumulative reported irregular expenditure. The number is likely to be incomplete. I say this because when you've got entities that have got disclaimer of audit opinions, normally even irregular expenditure that they disclose is incomplete. So there's a credibility problem around this number. What we've done, though, as Team HSA, we've been vigilant to go and look deeper at what sits behind this number, and we're able to use our powers to then highlight where there are financial losses and raise it through the MI process, which I think starts to improve what happens with expenditures that are irregular. The number for unauthorized expenditure this year for 2023 is 4.59 billion rand. That's the number for this year. The cumulative number is 26 billion rand over the 4 years. The numbers are in our general report as set out there. And then there is a matter around irregular expenditure. You may be aware that there is a different dispensation now for some of the auditees where they don't have to disclose the irregular expenditure in their annual financial statements. They can disclose it in the annual report. What we've done, where we receive the annual report in time, we've been able to check whether the number they put in their financial statements in the annual report is correct. But some of them didn't give us the annual report on time, so we were unable to confirm that number. My sense is this. When there is an audit report that shows non-compliance on procurement issues, the conversation with that accounting officer needs to be, what are you doing to stem this irregular expenditure going forward? What are you doing to investigate these non-compliances and hold people accountable? Because that's your job. As accounting officer or accounting authority, forget where the number sits, annual report or in the audit report or in the annual financial statements. The audit report will still say we found non-compliance. My request to the honourable members of Parliament is to think about how you can shape the accountability and oversight conversations with those accounting officers outside of the number, but to say, in principle, tell us, accounting officer, what are you doing to investigate what the transgression that's been reported? How comfortable are you that it's not extensive? What are you doing to make sure that it doesn't recur? What controls are you putting in place? And have you checked that there's no leakage arising from the transactions that were flagged by the AG? That's how we're going to get these institutions running better, when accounting officers are held accountable for acting on their duties as given in law. Honorable Singh asked a very difficult question about where are we seeing lack of value for money in specific spaces in government. I think there are a number of areas where there is leakage through duplication, through poor quality of spend, etc. And then there are other areas where it's matters of ill discipline, which we would have raised. My quick response would be, please look at the sector work we've done, which is available to the members of the different portfolio committees. Please also look at the annual financial statements and the audit report we issue for each and every one of these auditees. Where you see an MI and we raise financial loss, ask the question, because there is loss. Where you see us saying financials are not being submitted, ask the question, why would compensation fund year after year end up with financial statements and annual reports that are not subjected to proper scrutiny? Why? Why would UIF, with its significant resources and its significant responsibilities to provide social benefits to South Africans, why would that particular audit report never enjoy the scrutiny it should? So when we raise this matter about non-submissions and exclusion from scrutiny, it's an invitation to say there are real issues around transparency and accountability. The Department of Public Works, there are a number of MIs we've raised that lead to a confirmation that there is poor quality of spend. Whether you look at them in terms of lack of maintenance of buildings, whether you look at them in terms of these month-to-month leases that are extended year after year with huge escalations and poor value for money at the end of the day. So I think there are a number of opportunities for us to answer the question in specific areas. It's difficult to pull out just one. Honourable Singh also asked if the insights we've shared on the higher education sector have been shared with responsible parties, the minister, the accounting officer being the DG in the department, the portfolio committee, and that's a resounding yes. Anything that goes into our report, by the time it gets here, it has been shared with all of the people that have got specific responsibilities, either as administration, as the executive, and even as oversight. So this would not be new information to them. Internal auditors of different departments, unfortunately, also tend to operate in that silo. So they don't look at the entire sector the way that we've done. There's an opportunity for the leadership of that portfolio to invest in some capability to look at that so that they avoid the repetition of the type of leakages we've seen. The MIs, the question is, you want to see a certificate of debt. The PFMA cycle is interesting. More than even the MFMA one, there's such good responsiveness by accounting officers. You know, some of these MIs, my team then gets upset. They think they found an MI, and then before they can even register it as an MI, the accounting officer acts. And I'm always at pains to say, that's okay. We don't have to have 270 MIs. It's okay to report 266 because the other accounting officers acted quickly when we raised the matter. So that's a good story around these MIs. Honorable Matuba, reviewing legislation, I'm not sure. I'm no labor expert around whether or not that legislation needs to be changed. What we've seen as auditors of the public sector for many years is that, and that's why we've captured our recommendation as we have, there needs to be attention to ensuring that the right people are employed, people of competence, people who will be disciplined, people who will attend to their duties. Two, there needs to be attention to setting the right sort of performance standards and requirements with those appointed officials. Now, when you've got a problem as what we've set out on performance information, it would tell you that the culture of setting performance standards and cascading them into the senior management level that culture is still not there. Those disciplines are not there. And it becomes difficult to hold anyone accountable if you've not been disciplined in setting their performance standards. It then becomes important, once you've hired the right person, making sure that they've got good performance requirements set out for them. You monitor them and you hold them accountable. And you don't have to be an expert in finance to hold a CFO accountable. If they're not submitting financials on time, that's a key responsibility. If their financials don't have credibility, check with internal audit. Ask them. Ask the audit committee. Ask the AG. Look at our reports. You know there's ample evidence that there's a problem. Similarly, an accounting officer. Their responsibilities are clearly articulated in the law. And those who are in the executive, who supervise them, have every opportunity to look to internal audit committees, as well as the AG reports, to understand what they need to do. The quality of spend and skills development, I think we've articulated, and I'm glad that the insight has been useful for the honourable members. The annual performance plans, I think the partnership we're striking with GPME, as you say, Chair, is starting to help. But everyone in the ecosystem needs to worry a lot more about performance information. Senior managers, accounting officers, internal audit committees, the executive authorities, as well as the portfolio committees in Parliament. The plans, the quarterly reports, and the annual reports, and not just leave it to an audit matter, because it tends to be dealt with as something for the AG, and it's not. Ours is just to give assurance on this very important tool. The SOEs, Honourable Mlenzana, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to articulate on the policy relating to SOEs going forward. What we do know is that having audited these institutions over many years, and having read even different reports from other structures, including the commission, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, SOEs are plagued in too many instances by instability and ineffectiveness at key leadership and governance levels. And if we stabilize those, that can assist. If we ensure that the expectations of SOEs are clearly set out in their mandate, but also in the annual corporate plan that they enter into, and then hold those managers accountable for it, then we have a better chance of winning. And if we are clear that there will be discipline amongst SOEs, there's absolutely no excuse to having only one of them attaining a clean audit year after year. Yes, I know that there's concern about, the procurement processes can be quite onerous, the requirements from the National Treasury's regulations can be onerous, and then sometimes the conversation says the PFMA is the problem. I'm not sure that the conversation about PFMA being the problem is particularly helpful. The issue tends to be, yes, maybe the Treasury regulations need to be amended. But the reality is this. It doesn't matter how perfect the legislation or regulations are. If those management teams on those boards are not seized with ensuring that they set up systems and processes and monitoring controls that are informed by discipline, even with the best policies in the world, they're not going to run proper performing institutions that are characterized by institutional integrity, transparency, and accountability. On the project, the 137 visits was an investment that we probably won't be able to make to this extent again. It helped us get clearer about what happens with these projects, enhance the quality of our insights and the recommendations we can make. We're hoping that this information helps others in the ecosystem of accountability to do their part, because accounting officers must be worried about the same things and start to put in place controls to deal with the root causes we've identified. Internal audit are the ones that must go visit the projects at different entities during the course of the year. Audit committees are the ones that must make sure that there are proper controls and oversight on projects during the course of the year. The executive authority who gets a quarterly report should be worried about whether or not those projects are going well. The portfolio committee should be worried about getting confirmation, not just from the accounting officer, but from the audit committee as well, to say, yes, we are comfortable that there are enough controls to make sure that projects are happening and are happening to the right quality and at the right pace. We can't be all over the show, and neither should we be. This investment, as I said, has certainly helped us. We are wanting to ensure that it helps others to propel them to act in accordance with their own responsibilities. It's disciplined accounting officers that will use this insight to drive the necessary improvements. It's disciplined ones who are professionals who will ensure that internal audit is properly capacitated to do what they should to help them and to take on board those things. The matter around, then it brings me really to the professionalization. Amongst professionals, cheats are always in the minority. Doesn't matter which sector. Not that they're not there, but they're always in the minority. In a professional environment, you tend to find people who've been trained to do what they're supposed to do, who understand their duties, who also understand that they also must be held accountable, who are not going to shy away from an AG report, but take it and say, all right, how do I improve going forward? That's what professionals do. They're not operating on the basis of perfection. They're operating on the basis of continued improvement. And they will be held accountable. It's professionals who will ensure that they have a fixed asset register and have a preventative maintenance plan. And if there's a budget issue, they are able to articulate it properly. It's professionals who are going to make sure that when it's time to submit financials, those financials are ready and they're submitted and they're of good quality. Section 40 of the PFMA says you must have a performance report. That performance report is ready for audit. And when there are findings, they make sure they understand them. Yes, defend themselves, but importantly, understand them and make the necessary improvements. That's what professionals will do. And they will make sure that there's discipline of themselves, but also of the people that they lead. The matters around the high impact auditees, and I agree with you, Honorable Matafa, we put them in a different category because we do think that with the biggest impact that they have on service delivery and on budget, on the entire budget, if we focus on them, we should be able to get the necessary improvement, translating not just into the number of clean audits, but importantly into the quality of delivery by these institutions. The people in charge of these institutions, I believe many of them contend with a multitude of challenges all the time. And there are a number of them who do respond well when we raise matters. The issue, I think, is to make sure that across the system, you have enough of that caliber of person who's properly supported by all the other players in the accountability ecosystem. On coordination, I hear you well, Honorable Matafa, around what we could do, and I think we'll think about that. The DAG is here. I'm sure we'll think carefully about what else we could do in the different sectors in collaboration with DPME and other players. And then maybe just the last comment from what was asked by you, Honorable Chair. The movement on these audit outcomes, you're quite right. Many of them will move from unqualified into clean audit. In fact, there's a good 37 auditees that are sitting currently in the unqualified space. And we have a good eye on them, and we're hoping that with the continued focus we are seeing, they should be able to move into the clean audit domain as well. The trick is to stabilize the administration. Because if there's too much disruption at that level, following political events, the necessary democratic processes, if there's too much disruption, then it's going to set us back, and you almost have to keep starting again. We would love a situation where we can bank the gains we've made through stability and through insisting on the right things, so that we can build on those gains and not start from scratch. The time of doing that is simply not there anymore. The focus now has got to be not so much about starting all over again, but more about driving all of these public institutions towards better strength, better delivery, and ongoing improvements in transparency and accountability. Those would be my comments, and I hope I've represented the very hard work of Team AGSA. They've made this big investment. They are the ones that have gone, I believe, in many ways beyond the call of duty, not just to implement the MIs as they've done, but to be energized and go run around the country, look at different projects and look at different programs, and have difficult conversations with our auditees. They've done all of us in the leadership team tremendously proud. So this is their work. Over the next few months, I think you'll see them as they come and present some of these insights to you in the different portfolio committees. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, AG. As you were responding to these questions, mainly on this bigger question that relates to these high-impact oddities. Is there no indication when you do this work that, if you have a department which handles 50 billion rands and a department which handles 900 million rand, see, the bureaucracy is structured in the same way. You see, in terms of their structure, they ought to respond the same way. You see, so there's no special mechanism which relate into the power, the resource capacity, and the depth of operation, which ought to be designed accordingly in dealing with these kinds of matters. It might be that that's another angle which probably would inform a better way of dealing with these kinds of issues. In a way, just to be exemplary, I'm looking into the AGSA's way of organization, because your specialty is on the audits. So your appointments will be auditors in the major areas. But now there's areas of performance. Then you would have to have quality surveyors, engineers, this and that, whatever you get there. Such specialties should benefit your assessment, your analysis, so that there should be credibility on what you come out at the end. So you follow your determination in terms of the actual outcomes, and they're structured accordingly. I think what Honorable Lenzana was referring to, in terms of the capacity which ought to reside in these public entities, should be consummate into the expected deliverables one way or the other. Though at times, fairly or unfairly, you'll find out that SOEs are more capacitated than departments in a number of ways. Or at times, not that even they're more, they seem to take advantage at times to pay more, I don't want to say better, to pay more than what in the public sector things are. But that does not drive their own capability. as well. You see, they have the best, they attract the best, they pay the best, and at times they fail to be at worst in terms of their own performance. So all those kinds of things ought to be looked into to balance up into the value of what is invested in each and every issue. You would imagine that the Minister of Health took a decision, whether sound or not, that no, fine, the heads of hospitals should be doctors. It's fine because the operations are on the health side. How has that somewhat assisted in terms of guaranteeing better performance? The same maybe in the department side. So the audits that we perform are the audits that feeds into the actual realization and improvement of capabilities in these kinds of departments. You see, there's a lot of money which goes into these departments. You see, if they do good, they do well, they're at best, it means a number of things. Won't be somewhat happy. So our pride is somewhat there. We applaud the good performance in terms of the audit, which has been the outcome this year. Very good. But you see, that's the example that we want to see, but to be more exemplary. I think more work needs to be done to follow these the impactful departments getting there, and probably from your side and your team as well, you highlighted a matter which relates to the internal audits. That internal audits must do this and that and that and that and that and that. It might be that they're not doing it, or it might be they are doing it, but those who are accountable, as it is the case, they ignore what the advices are coming from the internal audits. You know, I used to be in Treasury. Would have forums for some time with them, and just to try to somewhat take them into the fold of how the departments ought to be advised. A number of it went very well there. There was a gentleman responsible for that task in the province at the time. He did it very well. So we marshaled them into making sure that departments listen to them. You know, and they said it themselves. We advise them. They don't take any regard of our own advices as internal audit units. You know, so they are there for compliance at times. So it might be of use, maybe from your side, to issue some kind of experiential advices that we came into your institution. These were our own findings. Would be happy if you could follow the following things. You see, A, B, C, D, E. You know, so if you do that, the expedition that they're going to account even to yourselves when you get there, in terms of what they have somewhat done, and so you force accounting officers to listen to them. You know, and another thing is that AG, I know you might be doing it. I don't know how they follow it. Some kind of a pro forma instructive note, which could be saying this year we're getting in, we're going to be auditing A, B, C, D, E in terms of general note, and therefore would love to see a ready environment on the following matters, and that could as well take them over time in terms of their audit plan to look not for compliance but for actual sharpening their own performance and their value in terms of accountability in as far as state resources are concerned. You see, it might be one other. If you go to PFMA, it says, it highlights both things, financial and performance So there are reports, and then your work in each and every, and because DPME would be able to advise various departments on the central issues of performance and on your side in terms of expedition and getting there in terms of your own assessment as a auditor. Because you're not there to police. You are there to deepen accountability. To guarantee that people remain accountable on what they receive, and there is a standard created to say the state resources are in the responsible hands, one way or the other. So in terms of your recommendations, which you have coined there, it might be done for practicality purposes. You might go back and think about these things which are one is proposing and see how you not criminal. Am I harsh? It's not criminal because they're going to continue to do so, and money is lost. No longer potential. Through that money, value is somewhat lost out there. I don't know what you could probably think about in that area. Because when that is deliberate, that becomes a problem. I'm not talking about things that normally happen, but if that is deliberate, the deliberate act around such, no, that's criminality. You see, of the extreme. We should not be comfortable just to account on that angle and say, I know Tatil. You see, banemikhwa aba bantu bayihlafuna noyihlafuna bathatha iphepha balihlafune. You see, you find it no more. Imikhuba mostly. So it might be that there's a better way of dealing with this. So the accounting officers ought to hold their own functionaries accountable. DAG, do you want to say anything? When your boss has said it all, you'll get a knock in the office. Yeah. AG?
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. We take tremendous pride in being able to share this their way as things to do. Perhaps this is the last time I'll be sharing a PFMA report with the honourable members of Scoag, because the next PFMA report will be this time next year. So perhaps before I thank you and wish you well for the remainder of the year and the festive season, I do want to thank you on behalf of the office for playing your role in supporting the AGSA and in supporting me as AGSA, holding us accountable as you should. But always with a view to saying how do you strengthen the office, and that I think will stand the office in tremendous stead, and it certainly fulfills I believe the aspirations of the writers and crafters of our constitution when they determined that there must be a Scoag within Parliament with these specific responsibilities insofar as the office of the AG and the AG is concerned. And I'm particularly pleased that in my term as AG, I've had the privilege of working with yourself, Honourable Chair, and with the honourable members who've been consistently available and consistently attentive to supporting the work of the AG. So thank you.
No, fine. I think let's appreciate that the AG has come in front of us in terms of presentation of the Public Finance Management Act results, which are good in indication. The growth of the audits, which are of a good benefit in terms of financial controls, and that growth should be transformed into the actuation of value for money going out there. So I think we need to have that appreciation to the auditees themselves, which is indication that the executive, the government, is taking consideration of some advices from the Office of the Auditor-General. that growth is well appreciated. And we continue to urge those who lag behind to take heed into the advices which have been provided at a time when the audits take place. They are of value. They would assist in terms of improving the standard and the worth and the value of what would want to see in terms of their own professional accountability and the value of them being responsible of such entities. And it's true that it's the last time that we'll be handling a report of this nature. The penultimate report will be coming on our way on the FMMA report, the Municipal Finance Management Act report, which we have to receive sometime next year, which might be March, February, somewhere there. May, yeah. Yeah, no, we'll want to receive that report earlier. We want to receive that report earlier so that when we close for elections, at least we close having had some kind of foresight of what is happening out there. Indeed, from our side, we will say even then that it has been good to be working with a very responsive office of the Auditor-General, starting from the late Makwetu, may his soul rest in peace, and your takeover has been very seeming in a seamless way. So we really appreciate that kind of orderly, takeover, which has given rise into the high standard and value of the office of the Auditor-General. And the fact that you have benefited from such, it is an indicator that the country is really growing in intent. There was a discussion, a debate in Parliament recently, I think a week or so, 2 weeks ago, on the Chapter 9 institutions. Every speaker that spoke there, except for one, they spoke very well about the office of the Auditor-General. And I had to advise that speaker that you don't live in South Africa. You see, indeed, we are very proud of this office, the work you do, the way you normalize the interaction with the auditees. You are not enemies. You don't have to fight about anything. You ought to work to ensure that the country enjoys the benefit of accountability. It's part of the Constitution. It's part of what we have to do. And so we must collaborate on such. And we are there to help them and to just go along. We have shown it during the time when you had to conduct a real-time audit because you worked together with those entities and departments. And there's been visible value and improvement from there. Well, there's a number of things that need to be done and would work towards such. This is our country. We must make it work. You see, it's our responsibility. It's my responsibility, it's your responsibility. But thank you very much. Thanks, colleagues. You are invited for, is there any lunch somewhere? Yes. For lunch. But we are going to be waiting for a bigger one, which is the evening, where we are invited by the AG for a dinner of some kind. Yeah, which is taking place, I don't know, Cape Town. Taking place somewhere in Cape Town. I'm sure the notices are telling you where it is taking place. Thank you very much. The meeting adjourns.